Hello everyone, we're going to be talking about the primary arms Raptor versus Milgrid reticle. Which one is right for you, okay? And I've already done the video on this, and I said, hey, you know what? It's been many months since I talked about it. I wanted to do another video. I haven't even looked at the prior one, so I'm not even 100% of what I said and how I presented it. So the idea is I'm kind of doing it cold because there might be some other things that come to mind that maybe I missed last time or I presented slightly different. So that's why I'm doing this video again. And the reason why this video I think is important is because prior to me buying two scopes, one with the Raptor, one with the Milgrid, I had spent a lot of time looking at images of these two reticles, trying to figure out what I should get. Okay, so I've had both of these reticles, both scopes with both of these reticles now for a couple of years. So I think I've kind of figured it out, and I think I can help you guys figure out what's going to be best for you. Now, at the beginning of this video and also at the end of the video, I've got like a side-by-side video where you can see these two scopes. I'm basically shooting at, I think it's something like 400 or 500 yards. I think it's 500 yards, where you can basically see how these two scopes look at 500 yards. We're comparing here two different reticles under different magnification. So what you want to do is look and see how your eye is able to pick up not just the target under different magnifications, but also the reticle, which changes size under different magnifications. Now, this was a hot day that I'm videoing this, so there is mirage that's coming up, and that's actually obscuring our ability to see the bullseye on the target. So that's a realistic component of shooting. On some days, the mirage, it might help you as far as figuring out which way the wind is blowing, but it might also obscure the target a little bit, okay? So go through the video a couple times and try to see what's easier for you. I'm actually looking through the scope with an adapter, um, and it'll kind of give you an idea of what you're going to see. Now, the first thing I'm going to say is, if you're getting an LPVO, right, or a scope, the point of getting it, right, is to get one of these two reticles, okay? If you're looking for something that's simple, right, a scope is not, an LPVO or scope is not what you're really looking for. What you really want is this, okay? If you want simple, this is the thing that you want, okay? This is a lot easier. Now, you might say that, hey, but you need a bullet drop compensator because you're shooting at distance. This a Holosun 503G ACSS has a built-in bullet drop compensator in the red dot. Okay, now if you're looking at it without the magnifier, you can barely see it. Only when you flip on the magnifier does it open up and you can actually see the dots. Okay. So a lot of times people are getting like a 6X LPVO, and they say, hey, I don't want something that's too busy. They just want something with a very basic bullet drop compensator that'll get them out to 500 yards. You don't want an LPVO. You want this with the bullet drop compensator in the red dot reticle. The reason is because this is a much lighter setup. You can easily remove the magnifier and lighten up this gun if you want to do that. You cannot do that with like an LPVO or a larger scope. You can't just lighten up the scope. With this, you can lighten it up by removing this. Like at night, I would take this off the gun, so that makes a lot more sense. The other thing that is that with a lot of these are like 1-6 simple, basic, LPVOs, especially ones that are like second focal plane, right? We're usually either in 1X or we're in 6X, right? Well, that's exactly where I'm at with this, right? I'm either in 1X or I'm in 6X, and that's a lot faster than flipping over this lever over the top. Okay, so this is lighter, faster, better. You know, I can actually remove the magnifier. I can give it to somebody else. I can look through the magnifier without pointing the gun at anybody, right? Like, let's say if it's a non-combat type of situation, I can take this off and I got a monocular that I can use in 6x, right? This goes up to 6 magnification. That's the Vortex 6x, and I think Holosun also has one in 6x. I definitely recommend that. I skip the 3x, go straight to 6x, okay? Because again, a lot of times people say field of view, blah, blah, blah. Listen, you're not searching through the magnifier. You're searching through the red dot, and once you get on target, then you flip this thing over and you take your shots, flip this off, right? And then you carry on, okay? So if you're looking for something that's simple and basic, that will just give you some magnification and a bullet drop compensator, that's the setup for you, okay? So if you're gonna get something like this, right? So this is the Primary Arms PLX with the M8 Raptor. So this is a $1,500 scope, right? So if you're gonna spend money on a scope, and it's not just the money, it's weight. If you're gonna add 1.5 pounds to the top of the gun, you better be getting more than just a magnification and a bullet drop compensator. Okay, so that's I'm gonna say that outright. Okay, so if we're putting 1.5 pounds plus on top of the gun, we want a complex reticle that's going to give us a lot of information. Okay, so let's put this gun down. All right, so we're at the point where we decided, hey, we need that complex reticle. Why do we want a complex reticle? Well, we want more than magnification. We want more than just a bullet drop compensator. But we also want to be able to hold for wind, right? Because now we're consistently shooting, 400 to 600 yards, right? Or that's one of the things that we're going to be doing. So we want to be able to hold for wind. We want to be able to communicate to other people, where, hey, like if I say, there's a target over there that's bright red, well, look 2 mils to the right of that because I think there's somebody hiding there, okay? So that's called team navigation, right? So you want to be able to navigate other people that have the same type of scope to different places that you want them to look, okay? To look at. So the other thing that we want to be able to do is we want to be able to range estimate, right? We want to be able to range estimate off the size of a man, and we also want to be able to range estimate off of the size of other things that are very common. For example, all doorways are about 80 inches tall. All cars, right, are about 15 feet long. The front bumper, it doesn't matter where it's a pickup truck or a car, they're all about 6 feet long, which is about as tall as a man, right? So these are very standard things. All tractor trailers are about 75 feet long, about 13.5 feet tall, okay? So there's a lot of standard things out there that we can use for range estimating, okay? So once we know our range, now we want to be able to hold for that distance. We also want the BDC, okay? So we've now determined why we want a complex reticle. All right, so these are the 2 best options out there. One is the Raptor, which is a much simpler design, and one is the Milgrid, which is a much more complex design. Obviously gives you a lot more information, okay? So let's talk about the Raptor on that side versus the Milgrid on this side, okay? So the Raptor basically gives you a bullet drop compensator, right? So each of these lines over here is for a different holding distance, specifically for 5.56 or 308, because they follow a similar trajectory, okay? Now, the question becomes, okay, fine, different grain bullets go at different speeds, different length barrels. How does that take that into account? So the way this works is you basically take a 50-yard zero, true it out to 200 yards, right? And then you'll go to the halfway point, which is usually 400 yards, and you'll true it out to 400 yards. And once you get 400 yards dialed in, okay, everything above it and everything below it is going to be combat accurate, okay? So if you go back, once you dial in at 400 yards, if you go back to 200 yards, which is the tip over there, okay, you put on your target, okay, maybe you're 2 inches higher, 2 inches lower. It does not matter. Maybe you go out to 500 yards, which is the line below that. And again, you might be 2 inches high, 2 inches low. It does not matter. So with the Raptor, each of these lines over here, these BDC lines, is calibrated for a yardage. So the lines up here are closer to each other, but then as you go like between, basically between 4 and 500 yards, the lines are closer. But between 600 and 700 yards, they're further apart. Between 700 and 800 yards, they're even further apart. Okay. Now with the mill grid, which I have on this side, okay, each of these lines is equally spaced, right? They're 1 mil apart, and each of these dots is 1 mil apart. Okay, so this grid here, it's perfect. It's kind of like a tic-tac-toe box with lots of boxes. Okay, each of these dots is equally spaced. On some scopes, like let's say on my what do I have? I have like a 4 to 25 scopes, because it goes up to 25 power, and basically you zero in more. They'll give you a half dot in between. Okay, so instead of it just being 1 by 1 mil, it's a half mil by a half mil. And what they do is that the half dot in between is a little bit smaller, so that you can tell them apart. Okay, so that's the main thing to understand as far as understanding the difference between the Raptor and the mill grid. The mill grid, everything is 1 mil apart, right, for the most part. Let's put the half mils aside for a minute. Everything is 1 mil apart, whereas with the Raptor, everything is apart at a different distance. Okay, now once you get to the bottom here, right, because this goes out to 800 yards, you got the Raptor has a BDC that goes out to 800 yards. Then it starts a regular mill lines over here. So for example, you got 10, basically from here to here, that's 10 mils, right? And each one of these lines is 1 mil. So the nice thing about the Raptor, like the M8 Raptor, is it kind of merges the two, right? You have the BDC up here with the calibrated dots for wind holds, right? Because each of these dots is calibrated for wind. So that's a 5, 10, 15, 20 mile per hour wind. Okay, that's a 5, 10 over here. The edge of the shoulder over here. That's the 5. So 5, 10, 15, 20. So each of these dots over here is calibrated for wind. So they are all a different distance apart. If you go to the 800 yard line, each of these dots is 1 mil apart. They're pretty close to 1 mil apart. So if I needed to communicate to somebody, hey, look 2 mils or 3 mils to the right, I could use these 3 dots here to measure, to communicate to somebody that has this type of a scope, that has like standard mill lines. I can communicate to them, where I want them to look or what I want them to adjust. Okay, so the nice thing about the Raptor is it is a lot. I mean, it gives you a lot of information, but it doesn't overload you with information, and it's really good if you're working alone, where you're not worried about communicating information to other people, and it's also really good for 5.56. The reason is with 5.56, we're usually not shooting past 500 yards. Okay, I mean, I've been out to 600 yards, but once you try to get to 700 yards, the wind really starts pushing that bullet around, and the impacts with the 5.56 are so light, even on like dirt, they're so light that you can, especially if you only got like 8 magnification or even 10 magnification that I tried it out with. Even with 10 magnification, it's really hard to spot the impacts with 5.56, even on like a clear dirt background. So forget about trying to spot the impacts on grass. So that's why I say 5.56 is really good for the, it works really well with a Raptor, because you're really not going to be shooting past 500 yards, right? You might go to 600 yards, and you really don't need to. Most of the time, you're not going to be adjusting for wind too much, right? But if you do have to adjust for wind, you've got these dots here that will help you. And the hardest part is figuring out what the wind is, right? You got to use wind ribbons. I've done separate videos on how to use the wind ribbons and how to calibrate them. You know, basically, like if your ribbon's hanging straight down, that's 0, that's 3, 5, 7, 10. Okay, if you got, you know, like a typical like light ribbon. And then if it's going diagonally, now you take the half value of that. So if you're working alone, that's really great. If you can't, here's the thing, even if you're using like wind ribbons, you know, a lot of times, I mean, the wind's doing different things at different places, so it's really easy to guess wrong, right, or to estimate wrong. Ultimately, when you're shooting 500 yards plus, where the wind really comes into play, you have to spot the impacts, and that's really one of the weaknesses of 5.56. It's hard to spot the impact. So that's why there's a, you know, the Raptor and the 5.56 is a good combo. Okay, but if you're going to be shooting 308, I would go with the Milgrid, and that's what I got on my 308 guns. The reason is with 308, I see two purposes for 308. It's either like anti-material, like anti-vehicle. Now, obviously, there's more powerful stuff out there, but as far as the lightweight stuff that you can comfortably carry around, 308 is great. Okay, especially like in a 16-inch, you can get out to 500 yards with a 308, and it's got, you know, I mean, you can do a lot of damage on a vehicle that's like charging you. Okay, so it's either anti-vehicle or, right, anti-vehicle 500 yards and in, or it's distance shooting 500 yards and out. Okay, so generally speaking, I think it is a waste of ammunition to be shooting a lot of 308 inside of 500 yards. Now, occasionally I'll shoot it. I mean, I just shot it the other day at 200 yards. But again, I mean, I could have done the same thing with a 5.56 that's just as cheaper. And that's why most of the time when I'm shooting inside of 500 yards, I'm shooting 5.56, not 308. But when I go 500 yards plus, right, main thing now is the wind starts really messing with me, okay? Because the wind's doing different things at different positions. And I want, the main reason why I want to use the main reason why I want to use 308 500 yards plus is so that I can hopefully spot the impacts and make a quick correction. Okay, so the way it works is like, let's say, all right, so again with the 308 with this Milgrid, I zero at the tip here 50 yards. That gives me my second zero at 200 yards. And then what I'll do is, because usually the tip here is 300 yards, the first line here is 400 yards, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to 400 yards, and I'm going to take my shots, and I'm going to adjust. I'm going to true it out at 400 yards. So let's talk about what happens once we true out at 400 yards, which is right here, okay? Well, the next line underneath it, that would, I mean, 500 yards will normally be true at that. So you can just go ahead and put that at the when you're at 500 yards, put this line over here on your target, take your hits. Now the width of these bars over here is calibrated to the width of a man, and that's both on the Raptor and on this Milgrid. Okay, now you're good up until about 500 yards, but when you get out to, like, if you want to go 600 yards, that line is not going to work. If you go 700, 800 yards, none of these lines over here. Basically, now you have to collect information, right? You have to know if you're shooting 600 yards, where you're going to hold, all right? Do you hold on the 6, or do you hold on 6.5 mils? If you're shooting 700 yards, you hold on 8 mils or 8.5. So now you got to memorize those things. So that's one way you can do it. The way I usually do it, right, if I'm shooting 600 yards plus on a 308 gun that has the Milgrid, what I will do is I'll take my shot. So let's say I'm shooting at, let's say, 700 yards, and I think that 700 yards is going to probably be this barbell over here. I put that on my target, and then I spot the impact. So let's say I'm holding here where the barbell is, but the impact is actually here, okay? So what I'll do is, I mean, one of the things I could do is take this line, move that to the target, take my shot. What usually starts happening with the first focal plane scope, right, especially if you've got magnification that's more than 10 magnification, if you've got like 12 or 15, these lines down here, they start being at the very bottom of your scope, because with the first focal plane scope, as you zoom in, everything kind of spreads out. So if you try to look at like 8 mils or 9 mils, it's like way at the bottom of your scope, and it's kind of hard to look at. So usually, if I'm going to have a scope that's going to be shooting 500 to 1,000 yards, right, I'm going to have more magnification, and I'm also, with this mill grid, but I'm also going to have dialing turrets. Okay, now the turrets on this are also dialable, right? They have mills lines on it, but they don't have a zero reset. So let me take this off for a second. So what happens with this, I can dial up using these measurements over here, but what happens is, and I've done this a lot of times, if you start dialing up, right, it's very easy to kind of lose your place and forget, like, okay, which way did you dial, left or right? And you can very easily lose your zero because you're adjusting on the dial. On a dialing scope, you want a zero reset. So actually, let me go get a scope with a zero reset so you guys can understand if you haven't seen it before. Give me a second. Okay, so this is the upper for my AR-10, or one of the uppers for my AR-10. This one has a 5 to 25 scope. So with this one over here, right, this has a dialing turret with a zero stop. So I've adjusted this. So if I dial up on this, I just come back and it'll always bring me back to that zero. Okay. So on this scope, I can dial up and I can always come back to that zero without losing my zero. So, and this is an important feature here because, like I said earlier, this mill grid here, there's a lot of information here, and it's very easy to kind of get lost in here sometimes. Because with this one over here, if I'm shooting for 600 yards, yeah, I mean, there's less lines, there's less dots. I can easily see that's 6, that's 5, that's 7, okay? But here, right, if I want to go to 6, which is there, right, because that's my 5 barbell, that's my 6. If you're looking through this for a long time, you can kind of lose your place over here, all right? So if I'm holding here, right, because that's where I think that I'm going to be, and I see that the impact is actually here, what I'm going to do with this, rather than deal with all these dots and lines, right, if I see that it impacts on the 6 mil line, I'm just going to dial up 6 mils. Okay, so when I dial up 6 mils, right, because I've now dialed up 6 mils, now I'm just putting the tip of my chevron on the target and taking my shot. Okay, now if I take my shot and I see that, let's say the impact is here, well, now, yeah, for this, I would just move this to the target. But the point is, like, even though this looks like there's a lot of stuff going on, there's a lot of clutter here, normally I'll use this with a dialing scope, and I'll use these dots and all these lines here to figure out what adjustments I need to dial into the scope. Okay, so if I see that I'm impacting here, okay, so that's the 9 mil line, right, which is very typical if I'm shooting 1,000 yards with 308. I'm either going to be somewhere between 9 and maybe 13. So that's way down on my scope. It's kind of hard to see near the bottom of my scope over here. So if I spot the impact at 11 mils, I'm just gonna dial up. Where are you? So you guys see, I kind of lost it. So which way do I go? I don't know. You know what? I'm just gonna go back to 0. Here you go. I came back to my 0, right? And now I want to dial up 11 mils. So I'm gonna go all the way around once to the 0, and then go back to the 1, and now I've dialed up 11 mils, and I can take my shot at 1,000 yards. And then when I'm done shooting, I'm just going to dial this back down. Okay, so that's why with this type of a scope, where you're shooting 500 to 1,000 yards, you want all this extra stuff here, right? Because you're going to use this information to dial into the scope, so that all you got to do is use the tip over here to take your shots. Because remember, this is a much more open area, and also if I'm a little bit off, I can spot the impact. So let's say I take my shots I'm holding here and I see that the impact's here, well, now I just move that dot to the target. Okay. So the mill grid, what I have found, not only works better with a 308 gun, but it also works better with a dialing turns that have that zero, that you can come back to that zero and not lose your space. If I try doing it with the other one, which doesn't have that zero, that zero stop, I'm going to lose my spot, and I'm going to lose my zero. I may go, because I'm not going to know if they go all the way around. I mean, I think there's some lines over here that kind of help you figure that out. So, but it gets confusing really, really quickly. Okay. So that's why, again, it took me several years to kind of figure this stuff out. So that's why I'm sharing it with you guys. And I do not monetize this channel. All the stuff here you see here, I paid for. The only way I make money is by actually training people. Okay, so I got, it's not like I'm trying to push you one way or the other so I can make some money. That's not how I make money. But in general, if you're shooting 500 yards and in with 5.56, because that's probably what you're going to be doing, you're probably going to be happier with the reticle. You're probably going to be happier with the Raptor, because it gives you just enough information, but not too much information, and doesn't over clutter you. And you still got regular mill lines here and off to the side, so that you can range estimate other things. You can range estimate the size of a man. But if you're going to be shooting 308, 500 yards plus, you want this over here with all this information, which at first glance looks like a big clutter, but we're not necessarily going to be, we're just going to use this to get the initial information that we need to dial into the turrets. Okay. So usually with this scope over here, I will dial for elevation and I'll hold on the dots for wind. I'm not going to, I don't, some people do dial for wind. I don't. One reason is because the wind dial doesn't have that zero set. So if you go back and forth enough times, now normally if you're holding for wind, you're never going to go more than 2 or 3 mils left or right. So it's not that hard to lose your place, because most of the time you're not even going 2 mil. I mean, I think when I was shooting at 1,000 yards, my total hold for wind was 2 mils, and I think it was like a 5 mile per hour wind that day. So normally you're not going to go that far, so it's pretty easy to get back to your zero. But with elevation, because we're typically going more than one full rotation, you absolutely got to have that zero stop, and that's going to work really good with the mill grip over here. Okay, so a bunch of information there. I don't know how much of it I covered last time in the last video that I did, but if you got any questions, just put down in the comments. It also helps push the algorithm, and I'll talk to you all soon.